Hi guys, my name's Andy and this is a Panasonic DVD and VHS recorder. It's a DMR EZ48V and I've got two of these units. I was so impressed when I first bought it. I bought it with the idea of converting my VHS tapes onto DVD, but it's a few years old now and I get a fault develop on it. I get what shows up on the screen as a U81 fault. I guessed it had got to be a stock fault as both units developed the same problem. I contacted a Panasonic dealer and they wanted £40 just to look at it. That's what are we now, 2017, and £40, that's over $50 just to look at it, and then they would have to pay whatever extra there was to cover the cost of the repair. And oh well, I'll have a look on the internet, and I couldn't find anything that related specifically to this Panasonic machine, but I did find a guy on eBay selling parts to fix the problem, the U81 problem, on a different model number. Anyway, I contacted them and they said yep, they've got a bunch of parts to fix this machine, and the parts that are needed are simply capacitors. This is a page from the manual, and you can see here that we've got the fault code U81 and we've also got the U80 and U99. And say I get the U81 and occasionally I get the U80, and in the manual here it says that a description of the fault is the unit fails to operate properly. Press the on off on the main unit to switch the unit to standby mode. Press the on off on the main unit again to turn the unit on, and you can do that and it does clear the fault sometimes. Anyway, I looked on the internet and found a guy or a company selling the parts, and it's company or a trader, should I say, Wizard Fest. I'll put the details on the screen. He's in the UK, but I think he'll send parts anywhere in the world. I have no connection with this guy at all, never met him, but it's got a good rating, so I thought I'd try it. And anyway, it turns out that the repair simply is the replacement of 9 capacitors, and you get these for a little more than the price of a cup of coffee, and they're 9 different capacitors, and it'd be just too much trouble to source them all. And you get 4 pages of instructions from him as well that he sent over the internet. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to follow these instructions and video it, because one of the things I found was that in his comments on his eBay site, he says it does involve rather a lot of dismantling, and unless you're happy to do a lot of dismantling, then it's probably not for you. And I love a bit of dismantling, so I thought I would make a video in the hope that it will help others. Okay, so the first thing to do is disconnect the mains electrical supply. There's I think there's 7 screws holding the top on. It's 1, 2, 3 on the back, and then 2 at either side. It's always a good idea to have something to put the screws in. With the 7 screws out, the case will, or the case cover will lift up at the back slightly and then just pull it out of the front. And straight away from a quick glance at the instructions that Steve sent, you can see that this is the board that I need to be concentrating on, and these are the various capacitors that have got to be swapped over. And again, it's clear that the soldered side of this board is completely obscured by the case. So it's going to be a case of removing these various components. Okay, so we've got to remove this back plate, so we can start by unplugging the fan lead there, and I haven't done this before, so if I seem a little reluctant or hesitant, it's because, say, I'm doing it for the first time. Okay, so that's the fan, and we've got to remove this backboard, this back plate, and we can see there's a few sockets on here that are held on the back plate, and so we've got to take the screws out of those. Okay, I've had a look around, and there are 9 screws holding this back panel on. There's one for the main socket, a fresh pot for the bits, this one for the HDMI outlet is a machine screw. The first 2 self-tappers. We can leave those 2 in, they're holding the fan in place. That's the video outlet on the bottom there. And the last one is down here in between the coax connectors, and that again is a machine screw rather than a self-tapping screw. Oh, sorry, I've missed that one. Between the SCART connectors. That's again self-tapping screw. Now there's just these little tongues on the corner, which I'll show you. There's a little square that's punched out of this part of the chassis, and then on the back panel there's a little tongue down there that protrudes through. And might be able to see it down there. I'm not talking about this piece, it's the piece underneath it. That's it, hopefully you can see that tongue there. And there's one at the other end, but once you've released the first one, and that's got the back panel off it. Next, we've got to remove the front bezel, and there's one screw on the top here, and then there are a few clips either side, and I'll show you the bottom. On the bottom of the unit you can see where my thumb is there. Hopefully that is located in a couple of cutouts in the chassis there. I'm just going to put a screwdriver in there just to ease that away there, and I'm doing the same on the other side, just easing that away. Then I'll get a close-up of this. Okay, where the tape slot is, where I'm putting my hand in there, on that end you see this little tongue there. I'll see if I can get both in shot. We've got this one at the bottom which needs to be eased out, and then there's that one there. Okay, so if you can see what's happening there, just be very careful with that. Now I'm going to move over to the centre, well, just off centre one there. Got the same thing there. And then finally on the other edge, the other side, is that there. I think it should just ease out. But there seems to be an awful lot of printed circuit boards connections down there. As I eased that out, there was quite a lot of clicking coming from the these door mechanisms, and one of the things that Steve's warns about is that this is tricky to put back in, and there's a whole bunch of printed circuit board edge connectors there and here that have got to engage correctly with their matching sockets down here when it goes back together. I'm going to say I think there might be some fun and games getting that bit back together, but anyway, that's got the front panel removed. Now I'm going to remove this drive, and I'll show you the fixings for that. There are 4 fixings for the DVD unit, and first one is down there. That screw down the bottom there, that's one. This one is the second. Third one is down there by the side of that little motor. Down that hole, and then the fourth one is again down the deep hole there. Hopefully you can see that, but in any event, that's the position there. And for some reason these screws have quite a large shoulder on them. Fortunately, this screwdriver is a little bit magnetic, which is great, as it makes lifting the screws out easy. Well, that seems to be just lifting out, and then this board comes out with it as well. Okay, and that's the drive unit there. Okay, so we're getting close to just being able to see the printed circuit board. I can see two screws here. Oh, and we've got these plugs and sockets here to remove, and there's give you a close-up of that. Okay, so there's a little tongue there, and it's I wouldn't bend these out any more than you need because it's all a bit fragile. I'm getting my nail down the back of there just to release the little mechanism, and then lifting that up. Okay, so that's those three, and then there's another one which I'll show you. Down here. Okay, so I think we're on the last two screws now. There, and one here. And yes, I've got a printed circuit board out. So I think he was right about saying there's a reasonable amount of disassembly work. Those are the screws for the top cover, the back cover, then the single screw for the front cover, the 4 screws for the DVD drive. Then I've got the printed circuit board that I've got to repair, and the rest of the body of the machine. Okay, what I'll do now is identify the capacitors that have got to be replaced. I've got Steve's instructions here, and you probably can't see it very clearly, but there are 9 capacitors that are identified on his instructions. And what I'm going to do, I got some good old-fashioned Tipex, some typing correction fluid, and I'm going to mark the tops of the capacitors that are coming out with that. So that's the first one. Then this fella here, then this one. That one's quite domed, and so is that. So what do I want? 1, 2, 3, 4. Then these two, 5 and 6, 7, 8, and number 9 is there. On the repair kit, each of the capacitors are identified with the same number as the number on the circuit board. So you see the number down there, and you'll see this little white mark there, little semicircle bit. is showing you which side of the capacitive is negative. It is also on the printed circuit board underneath. It's marked negative and positive, but obviously you want to get the right capacitor in the right place, and you want to make sure you get it the right way round. But looking at this board, all of the negative ends of the capacitors seem to be facing either in that direction or in that direction, so you can very quickly see whether or not a capacitor is put in the wrong way round, as that white semicircle down there should be on the same side as the negative indicator on the capacitor. Okay, I'm going to set to and change the capacitors now. The capacitors are identified on both sides of the board, and this is the first one I'm going to swap, C11701. So I won't make you sit through all of these. I'd like to just tin the soldering iron, just clean it on the pad, but just tin the soldering iron a little bit, just to give it a bit of a start. One down, 8 to go. These are the 9 capacitors I've just replaced, and some of them are a bit domed at the top, and this one has blown its stuffing out of the end. So anyway, I get to put it all back together now. Okay, I've been double checking as I go along, but just have a quick check at the end of it to make sure that all of the capacitors are correctly facing the right way, correctly polarized, and that there's no debris got adhered to the back of the printed circuit board. Everything looks in order, so we'll start putting it back together. The printed circuit board locates on a little ear there and another one here. Get 2 screws in. Then we've got to reconnect these sockets. There's 4 of them. That's good. Then we put our drive back in. And again, these ears on the end there, there's two of them, plug into the board down there. And we also have to make sure that this connector down here is correctly located. Seems awfully flimsy. It's got the drive in place. We've got 4 screws there. It's a screwdriver that's the wrong size, but it's a bit more magnetic. It's always a good idea with these things to get all of the screws started before you finally do it up. Okay, then we can put the front panel on, and I guess that's going to be the hardest part, because we've got to line up this lot and when I say this lot, these connectors here, there's 3 of them, and you've got no real control over that at all. It's you're relying on these tongues fitting into the slots on the front, let's say when I took it apart there was some real clicking and popping, and as Steve has said in his instructions that you need to hold this up, and I guess that makes sure that that engages with this bit of mechanism here. But as I couldn't see it coming apart, I really don't know what's going to happen there. I'll just have a look around the front and make sure that there doesn't look like any surprises. So I'm engaging the bottom half first, and then well, that all sounds as though it's clicked into place. Let's say what I did was I tipped it so that I engaged the bottom first and then eased the top over. And then, if memory serves me right, yeah, there's just 1 screw to go in there. If you fail to get the front on correctly, then you'll be in all sorts of trouble because of the connections that it needs to make. There's that clip there that's come into place. Remember, I had to lift this up to get it off in the first place. So that's located correctly, and there. Yeah, that looks okay. Okay, next we fit the back on, and it's little fan going there. And remember when I took it off, I said we've got these little ears in the corner. So at this end I'm going to put it on with that sort of action. That's to engage that ear, and then this side something stuck in there. I'm trapping the fan lead there. Okay, and that's clicked into place there. I'll reconnect the fan lest I forget. Okay, that's I'll just zoom in on that, but that's the plug and socket for the fan. On the HDMI board, on the other side here, there's a little locator there to hold the printed circuit board there. It just sort of falls naturally into place, I think. So starting with a self-tapper, this one and this one are where the screws for the back cover go, in there, there and there. But we'll put one in for the mains plug. One for this socket that's here, which I've never used. It says optical. Well, this one is the one of the machine screws for the HDMI socket. Another self-tapper. Another self-tapper there. I was more interested in showing a self-tapper, the assembly and disassembly, as I figure if you're prepared to have a go at this, another self-tapper here, then changing the capacitors is neither here nor there, but it's the just knowing how much you've got to disassemble that might put some folks off. Another self-tapper that goes between the SCART connectors, and then the last screw I've got there is the little machine screw that goes into the UHF connector box there. Okay, so all I've got now are the remaining screws for the back cover. Just have a quick look around inside and make sure everything's as it ought to be, and that looks okay. Right, I'll put the top cover on and give it a go. Okay, well that all seemed to be fairly straightforward. The instructions provided by the guy on eBay seem to be straight and true, so no great surprises. He was right to say that the front panel is the trickiest bit, because you put it back together and you don't necessarily have a lot of confidence that you feel it's good. But I'll give you the details of where I got the parts from. It was eBay, and it's Wizard Fest. I'll put that on the screen. And if you don't want to do the repair yourself, he will do it for you, I believe anyway, but I'll give you his email address as well at the end. And Anyway, I hope you found that interesting, and if you have one of these units of this particular model number, then you know, I really do hope that it gives you the confidence to just spend a few pounds, few dollars, and get the parts necessary to get it back up and running again. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.